Most men think cheating begins with a hotel room, a hidden message, or another name flashing across a phone screen. But it starts much earlier than that. It starts the moment her energy toward you changes and your peace quietly disappears. And the dangerous part is this. She may still be calling you by your name, still sitting next to you at dinner, still acting normal enough to make you question your own instincts. That is how a lot of men lose themselves, not because they were blind, but because they kept ignoring what they already felt. A woman rarely betrays a man suddenly. First, she disconnects emotionally. Then her behavior starts shifting in ways most men never notice until it is already too late. Today, I am going to show you 5 hidden psychological signs she may already be cheating. Not the obvious signs every man already knows to look for, but the subtle psychological changes that reveal when her loyalty has already started dying behind the scenes. And once you understand them, you will never look at mixed signals the same way again. This is Liza from Secrets Inside the Mind. Like this video, subscribe and comment the city you are watching from right now, because men everywhere are dealing with this same quiet confusion in different rooms and different relationships. And if this topic already feels personal to you, comment "I felt it" below. Because the first sign is subtle, and most men actually mistake it for something positive. The first hidden sign is when she suddenly becomes a little too comfortable. And this is where most men get completely fooled, because most men expect a cheating woman to become nervous, secretive, protective over her phone, obviously distant. But many women do the exact opposite. They become strategically relaxed. At first, it actually feels like the relationship is genuinely improving. She starts volunteering little pieces of information you never asked for. She casually mentions a male coworker's name without any hesitation. She leaves her phone face down on the table and acts completely calm about it. Maybe she even tells you who texted her before you think to ask. And because you are a good man, your brain interprets that openness as reassurance. But sometimes it is not reassurance. Sometimes it is psychological camouflage. When a woman starts emotionally stepping outside the relationship, she knows the biggest risk is not getting caught physically. The biggest risk is appearing suspicious. The moment you become alert, her freedom shrinks. So instead of acting guarded, she begins feeding you controlled honesty. Tiny, harmless truths designed specifically to lower your defenses. That is why some men completely miss the shift. They think if she were cheating, she would not be this open. Meanwhile, the emotional intimacy between them is quietly dying in the background. Real honesty creates genuine closeness. Performed honesty only creates comfort. A woman who genuinely feels emotionally connected to you becomes warmer, more present, more invested in your peace of mind. But a woman managing appearances becomes smooth, rehearsed, careful in an entirely different way. Her answers sound almost too clean, too prepared, too emotionally balanced for what the situation actually requires. She might casually say, "Oh, Jake texted me again about that work project. He is so annoying." Meanwhile, what she is actually doing is normalizing his presence in your mind before you ever become suspicious of it. And slowly your instincts begin to fall asleep because you were never given a reason to wake them up. That is why watch emotional closeness more carefully than verbal transparency. A woman can become more verbally open while becoming emotionally unavailable at the exact same time. That contradiction matters more than the transparency itself. Maybe she tells you more stories now, but touches you less. Maybe conversations feel lighter, but actual connection feels colder. Maybe she is physically present while emotionally somewhere else entirely. And deep down, you feel it even when you cannot explain it logically yet. Do not interrogate her. Do not check her phone in ways that destroy your own dignity. Simply observe patterns, observe energy, observe whether her openness actually brings you genuinely closer or simply keeps you quiet and unsuspecting. Because the calmer she suddenly appears, the more carefully you should be watching what is disappearing emotionally behind the scenes. And once that performance stops being enough to quiet her internal guilt, something even more psychologically dangerous begins. Subscribe right now and keep watching, because the second sign is the one that confuses loyal men the most, and it can genuinely destroy a good man's sense of reality if he does not understand what is actually happening. The second hidden sign is when she suddenly becomes suspicious of you for no clear reason. And this is one of the most psychologically manipulative phases in the entire pattern, because it completely shifts the emotional pressure off her behavior and redirects it entirely onto yours. Out of nowhere, she starts asking strange questions. Who were you texting? Why did you come home slightly later than usual? Why do you seem a little distant lately? And you are sitting there genuinely confused because nothing about your behavior actually changed, but hers did significantly. This is where many men get psychologically trapped because they immediately shift into defense mode. They start over-explaining their own movements and decisions. They start proving loyalty that was never genuinely questioned before. They hand over their phone voluntarily. They reassure her endlessly. They become desperately focused on protecting trust they never actually broke. And the moment that happens, the entire balance of emotional power changes inside the relationship. Because now, instead of quietly observing her shifting behavior, you are completely occupied defending your own innocence. That is precisely what psychological projection does. Guilt has weight. When someone is carrying hidden guilt, the mind naturally searches for ways to release the internal pressure. Some people confess, some withdraw emotionally, and others project their actual behavior directly onto the person closest to them. In practical terms, she starts treating you like the guilty one because honestly, confronting her own actions feels unbearable internally. It is emotional misdirection. While you are explaining yourself, she is relaxing. While you are trying to calm her manufactured fears, she is buying herself more emotional space and more freedom to continue. Have you ever noticed how some arguments leave you defending yourself even though the conversation somehow started about her behavior? That is not accidental. The more loyal you genuinely are, the easier you become to manipulate emotionally during this stage, because good men hate being misunderstood. So they over-explain, they overcorrect, they try harder, they become softer and more accommodating. Meanwhile, the woman projecting onto them often loses even more internal respect for them during that very process. Stay grounded here. Do not become emotionally reactive every time she throws unfounded suspicion at you. Do not sit in emotional court defending yourself for hours simply because she suddenly performs insecurity. Calm men see clearly. Emotionally reactive men become easy to control and easy to misdirect. Remember this line because it can save years of emotional damage. Accusations without evidence are often confessions wearing a disguise. Not always, but far more often than most men are willing to admit when they are still emotionally attached to the relationship. Peace built on false guilt is not peace. It is emotional surrender. And once projection becomes the normal pattern, the next thing that consistently disappears is respect. The third hidden sign is the one most men feel the deepest even when they struggle the most to explain it clearly. She starts losing respect for you in subtle, quiet ways, not all at once, slowly, like a slow leak that eventually leaves everything flat. A sarcastic comment here, an eye roll when you speak, a slightly dismissive tone during conversations that used to feel genuinely warm. She interrupts you more. She stops listening with real attention. Your opinions begin sounding annoying to her rather than valuable. And gradually, your presence starts feeling like an inconvenience rather than the comfort it once was. Many men become emotionally desperate at this point without fully recognizing why, because respect is emotional oxygen for a man inside a relationship. Once it begins disappearing, he can feel the shift even if he cannot articulate it logically yet. So he tries harder, talks more softly, gives more, apologizes faster, hoping to somehow return things to how they once felt. But you cannot negotiate genuine respect back into existence. And the more a man emotionally begs for it, the faster it continues dying. Here is the psychological mechanism underneath this that most men never fully understand. When a woman begins emotionally disconnecting or crossing loyalty boundaries behind your back, guilt creates intense internal tension inside her, and human beings naturally seek ways to justify behavior that conflicts with their self-image. so her mind begins rewriting you. Your flaws become bigger in her perception. Your mistakes become more irritating than they genuinely are. Your weaknesses become impossible for her to continue overlooking, not because you changed overnight, but because her internal perception of you needs to shift for her betrayal to feel emotionally justified in her own mind. This is why some women become strangely and suddenly critical right before or during emotional cheating phases. You have changed. You are too controlling. You do not make me happy anymore. You are too sensitive. These statements are emotionally vague and almost impossible to defend yourself against clearly. That is because the goal is not genuine resolution. It is emotional distancing. If she can mentally reduce you enough in her own perception, her guilt becomes psychologically lighter. Disrespect is often emotional preparation for betrayal. And the saddest part is that many loyal men respond to that disrespect by becoming even more emotionally accommodating, thinking that loving harder and staying calmer will eventually restore the warmth. But attraction does not grow through emotional self-erasure. Like this video, if this psychological reality is giving you clarity about something you have been trying to understand. And keep watching, because the fourth sign is where most men genuinely start losing their center entirely. The fourth hidden sign is when the relationship starts feeling emotionally exhausting all the time. Not because of one major event, but because tension slowly and deliberately becomes the new normal. She gets irritated faster. Tiny things now trigger arguments that never mattered before. Your tone bothers her. Your silence bothers her. The way you answer questions bothers her. Some days it feels like you genuinely cannot breathe correctly around her without setting something off. And most men blame themselves first. Maybe she is stressed. Maybe work is overwhelming her. Maybe she is tired. So they become more careful, more emotionally cautious, walking on eggshells to avoid the next conflict. But that is exactly how emotional chaos traps people. Because once a relationship enters this stage, you stop focusing on truth and start focusing entirely on survival. Your goal becomes avoiding the next argument rather than honestly understanding why the emotional atmosphere changed so fundamentally. When a woman is emotionally involved elsewhere or internally disconnected from the relationship, guilt creates internal pressure that consistently looks for release. One of the easiest ways to release that guilt is by creating conflict intense enough to justify emotional distance. If she can convince herself that the relationship feels toxic, cold, frustrating, or emotionally draining, then pulling away from you starts feeling emotionally reasonable inside her own mind. That is why the arguments often feel strangely disconnected from actual reality. A minor misunderstanding becomes a massive emotional explosion. A harmless comment becomes proof you fundamentally do not understand her. A quiet evening suddenly becomes an argument about your entire character as a person. Chaos creates emotional confusion. Confusion weakens clarity. And once clarity disappears, manipulation becomes significantly easier to hide behind. Have you ever been in a dynamic where one person constantly tries to restore peace while the other keeps disrupting it with precision? That pattern is rarely accidental. Constant instability shifts all focus away from accountability. Instead of asking why her behavior changed, you start asking how to stop upsetting her. And once a man reaches that psychological point, he usually begins abandoning his own emotional boundaries just to keep the relationship alive. Peace should never feel genuinely impossible around someone who truly loves you. When emotional instability becomes daily, when tension becomes the constant baseline, when your nervous system never feels genuinely safe anymore, something deeper is happening underneath everything. Stay grounded here. Do not mirror her chaos. Do not lose your emotional center attempting to calm someone determined to create emotional storms. Because when peace consistently disappears from a relationship, loyalty often disappeared long before the fighting ever started. And eventually, after enough confusion, tension, and emotional exhaustion, your body starts fully realizing what your mind has been working overtime to deny. The fifth hidden sign is the one most men fight the hardest to silence inside themselves. Your intuition already knows something is fundamentally wrong, not because you found proof, not because you caught her in a specific lie, but because somewhere deep inside your body, The relationship no longer feels emotionally safe the way it once genuinely did. And that feeling can drive a man to the edge of his own sanity because logic keeps fighting instinct. Your mind says maybe you are overthinking, maybe you are being insecure, maybe you are simply afraid of losing her. Meanwhile, your nervous system keeps sounding the internal alarm every single day. You notice small things you cannot fully explain or articulate. Her energy feels entirely different around you specifically. Her warmth feels inconsistent and conditional in a way it never was before. She is physically present, but emotionally somewhere else. Conversations feel thinner. Intimacy feels disconnected and mechanical. Even her silences feel unfamiliar now in ways you cannot precisely name. And the hardest part, most men keep waiting for undeniable courtroom-level proof before they allow themselves to trust what they already clearly feel. That delay destroys them emotionally. Because by the time clear visible evidence finally appears, the relationship is often already emotionally dead. The betrayal happened internally long before it ever became visible externally. Do not ignore emotional patterns simply because you cannot explain them perfectly with logic yet. Human beings are continuously reading behavioral shifts subconsciously, tone changes, timing changes, emotional availability, eye contact, genuine attention, real presence. Your body notices all of these things before your conscious mind catches up and processes them fully. That uneasy feeling in your chest is not always paranoia. Sometimes it is pattern recognition operating beneath your conscious awareness. And women know this better than most men realize. That is why some will repeatedly tell you that you are imagining things while their behavior keeps quietly changing at the exact same time. They know that if they can make you doubt your own instincts long enough, they gain significantly more emotional freedom without consequences. So the man starts gaslighting himself. He ignores the emotional distance, ignores the inconsistencies, ignores the tension. He keeps asking for reassurance from the exact same person who is creating the confusion in the first place. Real love does not constantly make you feel emotionally unsafe. Relationships require genuine effort and patience through difficult seasons, but authentic loyalty creates emotional stability, not endless confusion. A woman who truly values you protects the emotional security between you. She does not slowly dismantle it while simultaneously asking you to ignore everything you feel. Comment below right now. I trust actions more than words. If this video is speaking directly to something you have been carrying in silence. Because the strongest men are not the men who expose every lie. They are the men who refuse to lose themselves while chasing truth from someone committed to hiding it. And if you know another man silently struggling through exactly this kind of emotional confusion, share this video with him tonight. Because the final truth every man needs to understand about these 5 signs is this: a man rarely destroys himself because a woman lied to him. He destroys himself when he keeps abandoning his own instincts in order to hold on to someone who is already emotionally leaving the relationship. The fake transparency, the sudden accusations, the disappearing respect, the constant emotional chaos, and the intuition you keep silencing while waiting for proof that may arrive far too late. These 5 patterns together are not coincidences. They are a psychological sequence, and each one is designed by the subconscious mind to create enough confusion and doubt that you stop trusting your own perception of reality. Stop begging for clarity from people who benefit from your confusion. Stop chasing reassurance while your peace keeps consistently disappearing. And stop telling yourself that love means tolerating endless anxiety just to avoid losing someone who has already quietly decided to leave. Real loyalty does not force you to betray your own instincts in order to maintain the relationship. A woman who truly values you protects your peace. She does not slowly destroy it while asking you to ignore everything you feel inside. Subscribe to Secrets Inside the Mind because the moment you stop abandoning your own emotional truth is the moment you genuinely begin to protect yourself. Thank you for watching. I will see you in the next one.